Hello, Magic players. Welcome to another episode of the Nile and Gerry Tea Podcast. I am your host, Nile Joan Rivers. Joined with me, as always, my good friend Gerry Thompson. Gerry, how you doing tonight?
And Dragonite.
And Dragonite, that's my boy. That's my
Yeah,
boy back
he's
there.
He's chilling back there.
We
I'm
love
doing
him.
great.
Yeah? Great.
Yeah,
Capital G, great.
I don't know. I tried to take a nap before we recorded and it didn't work, but I got to lay down for like 20 minutes. So that was
Yo,
good.
that's huge.
And then I got up and took a shower and I just feel refreshed, The old 9 p.m. shower.
I had a very refreshing pre-pod as well. I got home from work. Gerry and I are on a 3-hour difference, by the way, West Coast, East Coast. I got home from work. I started making some food. I went and sat on my neighbor's porch swing. She went and met me. We swung together for a little bit. And then she was like, "Do you want to walk to the ice cream shop? I'll get some ice cream for us." And I said, "Hell yeah, sister." And we went to the Salt and Straw.
Yes.
We got some ice cream. Brother, I feel refreshed as well. I feel charged.
Yep.
I'm ready.
Salt and Straw in walking distance.
Extreme walking distance. Unbelievably walkable Salt and Straw. It's incredible. It's the best shit ever.
Clean living.
Love that. Clean living and porch swing. God, do I love a porch swing. But yeah, so glad that we're both here for it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Just want to say here at the top, the best ways that you can currently support the Nile and Gerry Tea Podcast: liking, subscribing, commenting, sending us questions that we can answer at the end of every episode. This week, we once again have questions from Briar. Thank you, Briar. We have questions for other people too. But Briar, you keep sending them. We'll keep answering them.
Remind me to make like a sign.
Like a Briar sign?
The goat. Yeah, like
Briar the goat. Goated
Yeah.
Briar, yeah. So Gerry, you have some patch notes for last week.
Oh yeah.
Hit me with it.
I think I could have done a better job in hindsight with like the overarching message of the last episode, just in terms of, like, we talked about how people are just like, I want to win a tournament. It'll feel so good. And the better way to look at it, I think, is presumably you're going to be playing Magic for a very long time, and you're going to want to be satisfied about like the history, the entirety of your Magic career, not just like any individual wins you get here and there, And I think that trajectory goes up and up and up if you are continually striving for improvement and just trying to learn and things like that. And yeah, it is going to help you at the end of the day just appreciate, even if you're like, losing playing for top 8 or losing in the finals or whatever, like these things are still kind of like checkpoints and milestones in their own way. And especially if you're consistently doing well, which is, like winning record or placing in the money or however you want to describe that, I think that is so much more beneficial, and also just like speaks to your progress and like who you are as a player much better than how many trophies do you have.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Gerry, for the patch notes to last week's episode. If you missed it, go check it out. If you want to hear more about all that sort of stuff that Gerry just put a nice little cute little end cap on. But we're in a new week. We're in the dawning of a new week. Recharge, refresh with sort of naps and definite ice creams. Yeah. And this week, we are looking inward, and we are asking you to look within as well, but not within yourself, within the universe. That's right. UniVersus within.
The UniVersus.
The UniVersus within. No, this has nothing to do with the card game UniVersus, but it does have everything to do with Magic the Gathering. And if you are unaware about their newest announcement, we've got the Spider-Man set coming, but we don't apparently have the digital rights to the cards, or there's something fucky-wucky with the licensing. So what they are doing is they are creating UniVersus within versions of every Spider-Man card. And if you're unfamiliar with UniVersus within, that means every card they have, they're going to make a functionally equivalent version, same mana cost, stats, abilities, all that stuff, that has an in-universe name and different art. So basically making one set for the price of two is really what it is. But these UniVersus within cards are only going to be on Arena. You're not going to be able to get them in booster packs. They're not going to be part of the Spider-Man set. They are just there so, the game still functions digitally. If you're sitting there hearing this for the first time, because somehow Gerry and I are the only source of Magic news for you, which is crazy, and you're wondering, hey, this sounds insane. This sounds horrible. You'd be right.
Yep.
You'd be right.
You're right.
It's insane. It's horrible. It's so fucking awful. And here's the thing, Gerry. I feel like I don't want to go so far as to say I've been a UniVersus Beyond defender, but I've definitely, I think, had a more charitable opinion of UniVersus Beyond than a lot of Magic players leading up to this point.
What about now?
What about now, Funk Soul Brother? The fucking it's gone. They lost me. They lost even when people were like, I don't like that, the Magic aesthetic is gone. I was like, I get it. I empathize with you, but like it or leave it. This is what Magic is now, and that's just a thing that you need to accept, and for as much as it is kind of a bummer for that aesthetic to go away, I do think UniVersus Beyond has done a good job of bringing new players into the game. I do think the Fortnitification of Magic is more in service to new players than it is veteran players. And as someone very concerned about new players in the game, and someone who's really carved a whole little niche about giving a shit about new players, that's always been really important to me. I've always thought that part was really cool. This is the opposite of that. This is worst for new players. The worst experience people are going to have is the new player experience, because Arena is the gateway for new players. Even I've taught Magic to hundreds of people, Gerry. Hundreds of people. I am so good at teaching people how to play this game. It's, I think, truly one of my greatest strengths on this earth. I'm really good at it. I do it all the time. Every time I implore people, don't teach your friends Magic on Commander, right? It's where a lot of people want to start. It looks the most appealing. You're playing with more of your friends at any given time. You're playing with these highly thematic decks that have a lot of personality and expression, but you're monitoring 4 battlefields. You're keeping up with 400 unique cards. You're dealing with such complex board states and interactions and just nonsense. And it's overwhelming and it's impossible. And it's a truly horrible way to learn Magic. Every time someone asks me the best way to learn Magic, I point them to the same place, because it's been the same place for years. And that is the MTG Arena Color Challenge. It's where they start you. If you're a itty bitty baby on Arena, they take you through the different colors. They baby step you through it. They're like, here's a blue deck. It's just got creatures that fly and maybe a bounce spell. And then you play a game against an equally basic deck controlled by AI. And they're like, okay, let's add these 4 counterspells to your blue deck. And you're like, okay, same deck, just a few new cards. We took some old ones out, brought these in. You play it again. They're like, okay, let's add these slightly cooler creatures that do a thing on ETB. Okay, cool. You play this deck that you've played a few times and stair-stepped the complexity of. And then they have you play against a random player who's also doing the color challenge. It's so good. It's so perfect. Nothing I have found in paper or digital does a better job than the Arena Color Challenge. So it's always where I direct people. It's the natural start point for a ton of people. You can play it on your fucking phone. It's such an easy place for new players to start. And now they're going to start playing Magic there. They're going to be like, I love this card. Let me go to my local game store and get a copy. It's Spider-Man, what do you mean? What do you mean it's Spider-Man? Drives me insane.
Yeah, I don't know the order of operations here, where if they knew that this was going to be happening the whole time, or if this was a semi-recent bombshell that dropped. I imagine if you got to sign a contract before you even start working on any of this crap, right? And
totally
within that contract, it has to talk about whether or not you have digital rights.
Yeah.
So it seems so weird to go along this route and also defend UniVersus Beyond by, having it be legal and standard and saying oh, this is good for new players, when you know that they're going to be different than the cards that are on Arena.
Yeah, well, and also how many more times is this going to happen? You
Right.
know? Like,
it can't just be Marvel or Sony or whatever it is.
right. Yeah. And like they've like set this tone and this pace of like this is like what, one of 3 Universes Beyond sets that we're getting this year. So we're getting Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, and Avatar. That's all this
Yeah.
year, right?
Yep.
That's just this fucking year, dude. Like, how long? How long until you're dealing with, Sony or Fox or Disney or like Nintendo? Like, what?
Also, the second one, really? Like,
It's
this is the second
crazy.
one that you want to do? Like, at least do, like, I don't know, 5 of them where it's consistent. And
Mhm.
then this one where it's like, oh, we thought Spider-Man would be really cool, but like, sadly we can't do it on Arena. And people would be like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it's a great question of like, when did this happen? Because if this is a thing that they knew from the jump, it feels like abhorrent to me to have
Yeah,
gone through with it. It feels
agreed.
like, why would you not just say, okay, so there's no room for Spider-Man and magic? If it's a thing where like they thought it was chill, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense to me how you could get this far into the development and then they're like, we're ready to launch, and they're like, just in paper, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, no shot. Or they could have just been like, okay, this is not a standard legal set, and it just won't be on Arena.
Yeah.
Also
But then
fine.
like this is where they've really painted themselves into a corner because like they've already said Universes Beyond is standard legal. So now if they do that, it's way less confusing than what they've done, but it's still confusing because now you're gonna have new players go and buy Spider-Man cards, show up at their first like standard F&M, be like, oh no, you actually can't play with those. It's like, I thought they said Universes Beyond is standard. Is Spider-Man not Universes Beyond? It's like, no, he is, but this one's just weird. And sorry that you didn't know like this one exception to the rule or whatever. It all sucks. Like every path that isn't just don't do this sucks.
Agreed.
But I also just feel that people by and large are really bad with new players. And I think they're really bad at understanding new players, understanding what is hard for new players, what is tricky, I don't think your average Magic player even really has a grasp of where the barriers to entry are. And
Right.
I know
They don't
this
know what they're
because
getting into.
no, they have no idea. I've spent God knows how long, too much time arguing with people on the internet about what is and isn't hard for new players. And, obviously, new players is a very big umbrella term, and not every new player is the same. But I get a lot of my information about new players from new players. Like, I
Yeah.
seek them out, I interface with them, I ask them questions. I basically send them surveys, right? Where I'm like, what did you think about this? How did this feel? What did this do? And I just like, I mine them for information because it's so fascinating to me. It's so interesting to me to hear what parts of the game excite them, what parts of the game intimidate them, what parts of the game confuse them and bewilder them. And because of doing this so much, I've gotten to where I'm just like, I've got a pretty good instinct for it. Like, I've got a pretty good intuition for like, this is going to trip them up or this is going to be totally fine. And so part of what we're going to talk about today is how to better interface with new players, how to, maybe you've got someone in your life who's interested in Magic and you've tried to teach them and it's just been a frustrating experience for both of you. I think that's the most common teaching Magic experience, right? Like,
Yep.
sit down with your friend, try to teach them, they're frustrated, you're frustrated, and then it's like, okay, we're not going to do this for a little while. I don't know. What are your teaching Magic experiences like? Or have you even done it?
Yeah, honestly, not many. I mean, obviously this is like really outdated, but like how I was taught was via a coworker slash fellow student of mine, or not like when we were both in high school, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Fellow kids, how do you do, etc.
Yeah.
And I had some Magic cards, but I didn't know how to play. And the internet
Hmm.
wasn't really a thing. So I couldn't just like look up the
Hmm.
rules or whatever. It was just like, oh, these cards are pretty. I'll look at them. And I did have a bunch of Pokemon cards because I was playing with my younger brother.
Hmm.
And he came over. I taught him the Pokemon rules. He just read all the cards, built his own deck, and repeatedly thrashed me because he had like tournament Magic experience,
Right.
understood Magic fundamentals. obviously
Yeah.
that transfers well and is going to be way better against someone like me who had no fundamentals whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And he used the things from Pokemon, like this card that is just a free divination is quite good. And
Mm-hmm.
here is why. And I was just like, oh, I just thought it didn't really do anything because like I'll just draw those cards anyway. That was 15-year-old me.
Yeah, totally.
And then being able to transfer a lot of that stuff into Magic and him explaining like why his mono green stompy deck is good and efficient even though some of his cards are bad versus I don't know, like whatever silly elf deck I was trying to play or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was basically it. And it did really start in an area that I was like at least familiar with to some degree. But
Sure.
certainly me having these Magic cards and reading them, I don't understand anything. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, given the tools that we had in my bedroom, he figured out a way to teach me Magic and just get me hooked. It was not even close.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, something like that I think would be huge if I don't know, you're trying to convert someone from another game perhaps. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, maybe not even a card game, but like I don't know, maybe they play like bridge or cribbage or something and you can find like some parallels there or whatever. Like poker players coming into Magic, also a very common thing. So I don't know, try and find some common ground, something that they'll sort of understand. And I think that it makes that process a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I think anything that you can like simplify or like any way that they simplify things, you should just be rolling with,
Yeah.
Sometimes like I have a friend who like when I first started teaching her, she would always refer to mana and mana costs as dollars, She'd be like there'd be a 2 mana creature, it'd be like 1 and a black and she'd be like this guy's $2. And I'd be like, "Okay. This is how I'm going to refer to every mana value."
Yeah.
Forever with you,
Yeah. $2.
because like there's no reason to be like it's 2 mana actually, like I get it, I see what you're saying, and like we're just gonna we're gonna get as much on the same language as we can.
Yeah.
Now it did become a little confusing as she got better at Magic, and she'd start to be like, "This is only a $5 card," and I'd be like, "It's like a $40 card." Oh no, yeah, it is a 5 mana card. Yes,
Yeah.
you really touched on something there that I think is like the most important piece of getting new people into Magic. I think it's going to sound obvious, but the way that people teach people Magic, it doesn't feel obvious. It doesn't feel like they realize it's obvious. And that is, you do have to hook them. You do have to make them excited enough about it that they want to play. And the way that you do that is by showing them at least a peek into the complexity and the depth that Magic has to offer. And that is, I think, where a lot of people get tripped up because they think new players are scared of and cannot handle complexity. And they are scared of and cannot handle text on cards. And new players can read. That's a revelation, I think, for a lot of you. New players know how to read text. They can do it with the best of them. They can sit there and they can read a card, they can parse it, and they can get the information. The complexities for a new player are way more subtle. The complexity for new players exists in things like first strike as an ability. They exist in like, saddle and crew existing at the same time. That is a level of complexity that is hard for new players. Plotting, not complex. Spree, not complex. Like these are things that like really, really make a lot of sense. Offspring, a little bit complicated because the copy part, easy. The make it a 1/1 instead part, so easy to miss. So easy to fuck up. Such a like, frustrating little detail. But
then,
those sorts of things.
Yeah. Also, hopefully there's nothing that references like mana value or dollar value.
Oh
if
yeah.
you will.
Oh yeah. When you get into like weird rule stuff, and that's like kind of the interesting thing about Magic is it's sort of a unique game where like it is very much a game, but it is not a game that you're like, oh, you want to learn Magic? Go read the rules.
Yeah.
Like go check out the rule book. You almost have to have someone like guide you through it. It's like
I think so
fucking
too.
Themyscira or whatever. Like you only a Magic player can like show you to Magic,
Yeah. I think read the rule book is like step 20 or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like
I haven't read
okay,
I'm not even at that step yet.
Yeah, like if you really want to like hammer in and like learn the complexities and like the nuance or whatever, yeah, go ahead and,
Mhm.
and do that. Dive in.
Sure.
Because there is some amount of that feeling of discovery there, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And, it does feel good to understand those things. Like we've had Elliot Raff on here before, and he is my go to, like, I don't understand something. I'm asking Elliot, which he is very kind and gracious and always answers me. But the other night, I had one where I said something to a table, and I was like, I'm like 99% sure this is how this works. And they were like, I don't know. And there was even like a judge there, like a certified, I'm a magic judge. And he was like, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to look this up. And I was like, I'm going to ask Elliot right now. I asked Elliot. Elliot was like, it works exactly how you think it works. And I was like, it felt so good. It felt so good to be like, yes, I understand the like finer detail complexities of the game. Like
It's funny because that is probably how Elliot feels when you ask him a question. He's just like, yes, I know this. I
you're
am
probably
being useful
right.
right now.
This honestly, you maybe just like shook something awoke in me where I'm not gonna feel like I'm inconveniencing Elliot anymore. I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna give you a little dopamine release for free by asking the
Yeah,
dumbest fucking question.
I would maybe check with him first, but that is sort of what I suspect.
Right.
I feel this way for a lot of stuff when it's
Mm-hmm.
like kind of complex. But if it's a
Mm-hmm.
thing that you can just like easily Google or whatever, it's like, yeah, why are you texting me instead and waiting for me
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
reply?
yeah.
Right. But if it is a thing where you're like, only Gerry could know this or whatever, hell yeah, hit me up.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, honestly, I really love doing it for my like new player friends. Like I am a lot of people's Elliot Raff in that
Yeah.
way. Like a lot of new players, and sometimes the pipeline is new player sends it to Nile, Nile sends it to Elliot, Elliot, and I'll tell them I'll be like, I gotta send this up the chain. Like
Hmm.
you've asked me a really weird one. But it does feel good when they're like, how's this work? And I'm like, that's how this works. I don't even got to confirm with Elliot. I know it to be true. So that's sick. You're right. But suffice to say, you have to show them complexity, but you can't just show them complexity. You have to strike this balance between like, I have simplified the game to its like barest elements for you, and also like opened the door just enough to show you like how much there is. Like I just to show you like, hey, the rabbit hole is fucking deep, man. And like
Yeah.
if you like it even a little bit, like imagine what's back there. Like it could be fucking anything. Like it's crazy down there. And that's what gets them like, okay, like now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm doing all this. And I don't know. I think that's the part that a lot of people fuck up is they either way overdo it on the complexity stuff and they're like, all right, you've never played before. Here's modern Golgari Yawgmoth. Let me explain like these different like loops to you. Or they're just like, I've built a deck of all grizzly bears, and you're gonna fight my deck of all grizzly bears. And it's like, all right, well, you've either like turned their brain into soup or turned their brain into soup for wildly different reasons.
Yeah.
Like you've either bored them to tears or just like melted their skull. You gotta kind of like walk the line in the middle. And that is hard. That is why like teaching magic to people is hard, but it is doable.
I mean, it's definitely very doable. Like the game itself is great and does have things that can basically pique the interest of anyone. Any sort of like interaction or whatever is gonna tingle someone out there, you know? Whereas like there are people who like sacrificing things, people who like just
Yeah.
making like one big thing or whatever. Like
Yeah,
the
the
game
like
is very good at doing that. You just have to like know the person and know like if you sense them being excited by a thing or the prospect of a thing, lean into that because it's game
mhm.
over. They're hooked.
Yeah, that is a huge one. Is like kind of just reading the person, because like despite how many times I've taught magic, I don't have like a set way, like I don't have like a set curriculum or whatever that I'm like, we do this, 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 and this. I just kind of like I start in a similar spot, and then if they're clearly like I'm just gauging them the whole time. And
Yeah.
if it's
You're
like,
like, oh,
okay,
you
you're
get this.
grasping this part
Yep.
really quickly, we're just gonna go right fucking past it. Or like, oh, you're kind of struggling with this, we're gonna do some stuff to like really hammer it home. Oh, you're loving combat, so we're gonna like really get into some combat. Like all that sort of stuff. You really just gotta like read them and respond to what they're into. But it's hard. Like, this is a barrier to entry for Magic, of which there are many.
Can
But the
you
fact, go ahead,
this is very off topic, but can you
hit
imagine
me.
if public schools had teachers that were able to do that sort of thing with like individual students?
Yeah,
Good
well,
God.
the teachers can, right? It's just a matter of like the system itself is set up in a way where they aren't afforded that luxury because like they're just like, okay, well, you're gonna have fucking 40 kids an hour every
Yeah,
hour that you're here.
that's what I mean. It's not the
Yeah, yeah,
teacher's
yeah.
fault. It is
Right, right,
just
right. Yeah, it would be like actually, it would change the world in such a huge fucking way if teachers were able to just like work more directly with students because, you know, like I can level someone up in Magic so fast. You know, like
yeah.
I can take one of my new player friends and like they can have been playing, like they can be at the point where they get the game. They've been playing Commander on their own. They've been maybe playing some like Arena on their. They've been playing all this Magic on their own for all this time, and then they hit that point, that like first plateau of like, I like, why am I not, like, it's so overwhelming. Why am I not getting better? Blah blah blah. And I can be like, let me spend like a day or two with you. Let me spend like one gaming session with you.
Yeah.
And I do, and it's just like I like open their fucking third eye, you know, because like I just know so much more than them at this point and know how to like get from A to B, you know? But I can only do that because I'm working directly with them. I'm responding to like what they're getting and not getting. I'm identifying the pain points. Like I am doing what a lot of teachers would love to be able to do with students, you know?
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you could sit down with your like math pupil and be like, okay, like long division, you got that shit on lock. We're not going to fucking worry about it. Let's look at like exponents or whatever that you're struggling with. But no, they can't do that. So they just have to be like, hey, for the next 6 weeks, we're doing long division. And that kid gets bored out of his fucking mind.
Yep.
You know, like it sucks. It sucks. And if I did that with teaching Magic, no one would think I was good at teaching Magic. If I was just like, oh, you understand combat? Well, sorry, I'm in my teaching combat era. So for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to tell you a bunch of shit you already know. You know, like, what would be the point of that? What would be the point of that?
This is kind of why I think like any real group teaching sort of setting is a pretty large joke, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I definitely like, I've been trying for a long time to come up with a way to do like a structured, like new player coaching type of situation. And I think the only way to really accomplish it is to do it in groups. But I also strongly believe the biggest group I could reasonably do it with is like 4 people at once, you know? And
Yeah.
even that, I'm kind of like, we're pushing it. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of people. And if they're all on like kind of different wavelengths about what they're getting and not getting, that is like, we're getting into like virtually impossible territory. But I do very strongly feel like, because here's the problem, this, like, we've already identified having this like personal guide to Magic is like the fastest, easiest way to not only learn it, but also level up in it. Competitive players know this and identify this, and a lot of them do coaching, right? They will pay someone X amount of times per week, per month, whatever, to sit down and do this one on one, like intense training with them. You can't get new players to do that because why the fuck would a new player do that? Right? Like, I am new to this game. I'm just not invested enough yet to like spend my money to just have someone teach me how to be better at it. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't want to pay you $50. I want to bust 10 booster packs. Like
Exactly. Now, what I think you could get a new player on board with is a group thing where like what they're paying is subsidized by the fact that there's multiple of them. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe. Yeah.
so the barrier gets smaller. And what I've really wanted to do with it is get anyone to sponsor the idea as like content. So then what they are paying is subsidized by that entity and they're actually not paying literally anything, you know? And I can be like, give me like 3 new players. Let me teach them from literally nothing and then like see where they're at in 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, a year. And let me like make content about it along the way. and catalog this new player's journey in a way that no one's ever cataloged it for Magic.
That sounds sick, actually.
Yeah. So if you are a corporate sponsor who would like to corporately sponsor me to do this, I'll write you articles, baby girl. I will make you videos. I'll talk about it on this here podcast. I'll do whatever you want. If you pay for these newbies to get old Nile's training, hit me up.
And if you're a card store, for example, then they'll probably buy cards from you too.
Yo, hello, local Mox boarding house, Portland location.
Let's be real. Mox is probably not going to do that.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be Mox. Hello, other Portland game stores.
Yeah, thankfully there are plenty of stores in Portland, but
yeah. But anyways, that's always been a thing I wanted to do, but it's hard to do because again, the investment is just not there. Even though like when they do it, it's so crazy because it's like no one can benefit from it more than new players. Like because when you're like a highly skilled competitive player who's going from like I can consistently qualify for the RC, but I like am barely squeezing into day 2 every time. Like going from there to I'm doing better at day 2 is like a tiny gap that takes an insurmountable amount of work, right? Like takes so much more work. Whereas going from I just learned how to play Magic to like I am better than my friends who I just started playing Magic with, it's like an hour. Like it takes like no time at all. Like it's so I can get you there so fast. You could get someone there so fast. Basically anyone could get someone there so fast because like the gains are so quick at first.
Yeah. But, I thankfully I kind of had that with my coworker, and I don't know, it was nice, basically like going to my first kind of not my first like FNM, but like my second, third kind of thing, and just feeling like, oh, like these things are pretty easy,
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, and I'm glad you brought up FNMs because this is, I think, where most players interface with new players the most, and really starts to get into something else I wanted to bring up, which is the internal biases that people have, not just with new players, but with all sorts of Magic players, women, queer people, people of color, any marginalized person. People just have all these internal biases about them, and you can feel them. They're very evident. It is like a whole level of dealing with Magic events that I had to spend a lot of time working on because it would piss me off so bad that I would just get so tilted and just like tilt my way out of tournaments because, it was just like a death by 1,000 cuts of microaggressions thing. And I had to like work on like cognitive reframing, like actual like therapy bullshit to be able to just like handle, like psychologically handle being at these stupid fucking Magic events. And that's crazy. That's crazy to have to do for a game. But you do have to do it because it does happen constantly. And, it's definitely not just me. It's like every woman I know. It's every queer person. It's every marginalized person I know. It's like this shared experience. And,
it's weird because I don't have any of those internal biases, nor does any white male that I know that plays Magic and goes to these FNMs, so it is very strange to hear you say that.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's great. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Except for you and everyone else. No, but seriously, like it is a thing that people aren't aware of. Like it is a thing that like, like I know obviously you're joking, but like people will be like, man, that sucks that other people do that. And I'm like, you don't even understand. You don't even get that it is everyone. It is you. It is me. It is everyone.
I actively try to be better at this stuff all the time. And I'm not like cured or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you get cured. I don't think it is a thing that you fix ever. It is just you can try to work against it as much as possible, and that's it.
Yeah, just being aware of it is a great like step 1. And like wanting to work against it is a great step 1. But it is just like a built-in like systemic like part of our society and culture thing. Like it is fucking hardwired in there. And you got to be like very actively fighting against it. And if you got to this point and you're like, I don't know what the fuck this bitch is talking about. It's really small things. Are you raising your hand because you don't know what the fuck this bitch is talking about, or because you have a contribution?
I can answer the question.
Answer the question, please.
Okay, so my experience going into a game store in the early 2000s as a white male, walk in, a lot of other white males. They do not question my presence. They do not question, like, when I go to sign up for a Magic tournament, they're not like, are you sure? You know, like, you've never been here before. Do you know what you're doing or whatever? Like, it is just, yes, welcome into the fold. What kind of deck are you playing? What do you like to play? Whatever. Like, I am just automatically assumed to be in the right place or whatever. I don't think anyone else could say with a straight face that, like, a woman walks into a game store, especially by herself, beelines to the counter, says, I would like to sign up for the Magic tournament. And there's not at least somebody wondering, like, is this for real? Like, that's just it. Like, you don't think about it in these spaces a lot of the time, depending on where you live, I think. But if you are surrounded by mostly white males, yeah, you don't think to question anyone else's presence, right? It is just like when quote unquote outsider shows up, it is just like, oh, this is so strange and weird. Now, if you're exposed to this more often, it becomes less weird, right? But that is just not the case. And so then I think ideally we would live in a world where it's, you know, people, all races, genders, colors, whatever, and it'd be chill. It'd be awesome. But we can't get there until we stop making it weird for those folks to come try and exist in, like, our space. I'm using very heavy air quotes here for the audio listeners.
Yeah, well, and it's just like, it can be such small things, right? Like, a big one that's very common is you'll get asked while you're playing at, like, a tournament, how long have you been playing Magic for? And I want to be very clear before you start yelling at me in comments. I don't mean to say that is, like, a rude question to ever ask a person. Because, like, when you're making friends in this community, it's a very common, like, oh, where'd you get your start in Magic? You know, that kind of thing. It's specifically when we're at a tournament together and I am, like, the bitch that you're asking this question to. You know, like, you're not going to play Gerry round 2 and being like, when'd you start? You know, it's just me, because it seems out of place that I should be here at all. It seems unlikely that I would have been playing for very long at all. And then when I'm like, oh, since like 2007, I started with Lorwyn, is my answer. It's always like, they're always like a little taken aback by it. And I'm always like, why is it a fucking surprise? You know? Like,
meanwhile, I say invasion, they're like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is I'll be like, you know, 2007 Lorwyn, whatever. And then I'll be like, when'd you start? And they will have started like 10 years after me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, curious.
Yeah.
It's just fucking silly. Another big one, reading your cards to me. Oh, this one took a lot. This one took a lot of work for me to not tilt it into the fucking sun every time it happened to me. And it happens a lot to me where we're playing and you're just like, turn 1, I cast Thoughtseize. I look at your hand and take a non-land card from it and lose 2 life. And I'm like,
I'll play an Unending Whisper. I'll draw a card. Do you see that? It says draw a card.
And I mean, having like, it's extremely egregious if you've like turned your card to face me, you know, but like, just like reading this happened. It happened really fucking bad at this RCQ I was at with Corey Burkhart. And this dude was just like nonstop reading his cards to me at the point where I was
you like Corey. I know you like Corey, but my initial thought was like, Corey's just like, I will play this and draw a card, you know?
No, I love Corey. Huge Corey fan. He's also vegan, so it was always great when we'd go to events together because we would always just like go get lunch. It was awesome. But yeah, so this dude just like kept reading fucking everything to me to the point where it was like costing us clock, you know? And I was like tilting into the sun. And I was getting to the point where like he starts reading. I'm like, yeah. You know, like, play the card. I've played so much of this set. I know all these cards. But then Corey and I went to lunch when we got to the cuts of top 8, which we both made top 8. And he was like, we were talking about that guy because we had both played him. And I was like, hey, quick question.
What was Corey's
Did that
experience?
guy like read cards to you? And Corey was like, oh no, not a single time.
No.
And I was like, okay, because he read literally almost every single one of his cards to me. And Corey was like, yeah, that's just because you're a woman. Like he did not read a single card to me. He assumed I knew what all of his cards did. And that is so fucking infuriating, dude.
Yeah. I don't get it, but I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was certainly a period where I didn't get it because I didn't understand. I'd never really been exposed to it. Certainly I'd never experienced it myself. And I don't think that there was specific moments, if someone was like, oh, 2 + 2 = 4, you're like, oh, that's a thing I didn't know. Now I know that, right? Like you could have even told me that. And I would have been like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But I don't, just over time, it goes from like, maybe I'm sitting next to you, your opponent is doing that. And I'm like, wow, that person's being infuriating. But I don't put the 2 and 2 together in the scenario of like, they wouldn't be doing it to me. Right. And the more you notice it, the more maybe you think about why they're doing it. And then maybe you start noticing it more because you know why it's happening. And it becomes, I don't know, it's like background noise a lot of the time. If you like, there are random acts of discrimination happening all the time, all around you, that you could just tune out and just say that they don't happen. But like, once you recognize a thing for what it is, you will then start noticing it more.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, I always definitely noticed it, but I don't think I fully appreciated the scope of it until I had a fucking boyfriend who played Magic. And then it was just so in my face all the time because I had like such an immediate direct comparison of like seeing how people treated him and then seeing how people treated me and being like, what the fuck? I didn't even realize there was all these ones happening that I was like blind to. You know what I mean? Like until I saw like the fucking side by side. Like there was one time where he and I were working together on we're competing in the same regional champs, playing the same deck. We had spent all this time working on the deck. I mean, tons of fucking time working on the deck. And I, in particular, had poured countless hours into this deck. Like, so much time. And a really big piece of it that I specifically like, this was my part of the fucking deck, was the mana base. And it was like a very complicated mana base. And I'd spent a ton of time, a ton of effort doing all this math, figuring out like exactly what the mana should be. I wrote like a fucking huge document of like how to sequence the mana and like different situations that you need to sequence like very specifically for like very specific reasons. All this stuff. It was extremely complex, but it was good.
And it was like a Yorian 4-color deck as well, right?
It was a Yorian 4-color deck that had like very specific things of like it needed to hit the green, like it needed to hit 2 green pips by turn 3, sometimes turn 2. It needed to hit like blue by this turn and like double red by this turn and white by this and it needed to have like black on turn 1 and like all this crazy shit. Like the demands were all over the place. And I like found the line, like it was a weird mana base. It was a complex mana base, but it worked. And all weekend long, mana was not our problem. And a lot of people, a lot of at least like my people were aware of this and like were really good about being like, holy shit, this mana base is really good. You crushed it, Nile. But by and large, when people talked about the deck, they were like, oh, is that Mason's 4-color deck?
Yeah.
And every time I would just be like, like fucking seething inside where I'm just like, 2 people worked on this deck, like, and that was public knowledge. It's not like he, fucking was selling it as like his deck or whatever. Like it was very clearly always like, this is the deck we have worked on together, but it just like becomes Mason's deck once it hits like
there's
the
whatever underlying assumption is there, right? Where it's just like, well, the woman
they
is
work
probably
together.
not as smart. The woman is probably not as smart. Therefore, even if she did try to contribute, like it's on the cutting room floor. It's like it wasn't good enough to make the final cut. It's like, you don't know that. You don't have any reason to believe that, but you do, and maybe think about that.
Yeah. Internal biases, And it's just like the people doing it don't even know they're doing it. Right. And like, I didn't even know they were doing it until I knew to look for it. Like there's just so many things that like, and this is why people genuinely believe like, oh, I don't do that. Like, thank God I don't do that. And it's like, you just do not know that you do it. Like you fucking do it.
One of my funnest things, I think the first time I really got to do this was in like 2017 or 2018, was attempting to explain to someone who very clearly had a lot of privilege that they did in fact have privilege.
Oh my God, dude. There.
It was so much fun. It was probably like an hour. And at the end of it, they're still like, yeah, I don't know though.
I've walked these roads. I remember me and my ex-wife, great lady, by the way, still very good friends. We spent like an hour with this guy that was a mutual friend of ours, explaining to him that as a fucking cishet white dude, he had privilege. And he was like, I grew up really poor, which is true. He grew up really poor. And he was
Me
like,
too.
I don't feel like I had a privileged life. And I was like, I get it. We are not trying to tell you you've had an easy life. We're telling you that like you growing up how you grew up versus like a black kid who grew up exactly how you grew up, you have advantages that kid is never going to have. That is privilege. You just it's not a thing of like whether or not you choose to accept it. It is built in that it exists for you. It just does. Like you just have doors open to you that are closed to tons of other people, and you fucking have to acknowledge that.
I grew up poor, and I can very easily tell that the only reason that I am not still poor is because of the fact that I had privilege and like all of these doors were open for me, like straight up.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Yeah, my life was hard in some ways, but like, holy shit, was it easy in others. Just walking into a room and immediately, like, I don't know any of these people, but they just all immediately assume that, like, if I open my mouth, if I say something, they take it for granted. They believe me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is so powerful.
It's crazy. And like, I don't know. I mean, the thing is like, I am a trans woman. I'm queer. I grew up really poor. I also still have a fuck ton of privilege. I'm white as hell. Like I have a much easier time and safer time than, trans women of color. That is just like super real. That is quantifiable. That is demonstrable. Like that I have no fucking I have no disillusions about the privilege that I maintain. And like, I don't know. I think a tricky thing about all this stuff is people will be like, well, I am one of the like victims of these microaggressions, so I do not commit them to anybody. And it's like, well, no, you still have your own internal shit. And you might even have like internalized shit about your own communities, like
Yeah.
it all just exists. Like this is a thing that like every single person should be conscious of and be striving to do better in their just like day-to-day life.
There are women who do and say misogynist things all the time.
Oh, hugely. Absolutely.
Because all of this stuff is systemic. It's like if you have participated in society, like these things have been ingrained in you. Like if you consume like any sort of media, if you're around any other humans that are like passing on their systemic beliefs to you and everything, like you cannot get away from it at all.
It's so funny. I can't tell you the number of times that like a cis friend has been talking to me and like they start to tell me about somebody and they're like, okay, there's this girl who I really don't like, but it's not because she's trans. And they like start to sweat. And I'm like, let me stop you right there. There's so many trans women I fucking hate. Like, you do not need to, like, just because she's trans does not mean she can't be annoying. I'm trans and annoying, like it could happen to anybody. Like, yeah, tell me, girl, tell me about this bitch you hate. Like, I'm here for it.
It works both ways.
It works both ways. But I think when it comes to Magic, there are lots of ways that you can play the game that confronts these biases. And I think one is just like, I mean, you probably already have a list of things in your head that you have learned to be like always thinking and asking when you're playing, like if you're at the level where you're like thinking about what cards are in your opponent's hand, or like what like game they're trying to set up and trying to play, like all these things, like you have all these things that you have like taught yourself to think about and care about competitively. All you have to do is add into the rotation there, I assume my opponent is competent. And this is not just socially a cool thing to do, it's also competitively an advantage for you. You know how many times I have gotten people with shit because they very clearly thought I had just made a mistake,
Yeah.
but I had not made a mistake. I had very intentionally set something up and it looked like a mistake, but actually, like you activated my trap card. Anytime I'm with like new players and we're like playing on arena or something, when the opponent does something that is like suspicious and looks wrong, they're always like, oh, they fucked up. Like we can take advantage of that. I'm always like, do not assume they fucked up. Assume that there is a reason they did what they did. And we should be asking ourselves the question, why did they do this thing that looks like a fuck up? What could they possibly have that makes this fuck up being the correct play? Sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes they fucked up.
Yeah.
But sometimes the answer is they had like a really specific like combat trick or something. And if we had played as if they had just fucked up, we would have got blown out, you know? And like that is just like a piece of the puzzle that you can solve, but it requires you to assume your opponent is competent and making smart choices. And if you do that from the jump, you are less likely to read your cards to them, to ask them how new to Magic they are, to ask them if their boyfriend made their deck. If you just sit down and assume all your opponents are competent players who are at least of equal skill to you because they're playing in the same fucking event as you, that's a good step one.
I think so too. I do something, I guess, that is a little bit different where it's like I mostly start there, but then I do try to cater to how competent the person actually is.
Oh, totally.
Like,
you do need to like adjust that as you gather data, but with zero data, assume they're competent.
Yeah, I'm not just showing up to the table, turn one, show you my card every time or whatever. I don't do that unless you tell me like, hey, can I read that or whatever. Then you do that a few times. I'm probably gonna start,
yeah, totally
reading the card to you or whatever.
Totally reasonable.
But until you do that, yeah, I'm just I try and treat it like a normal game of Magic. If you can be normal, people, come on, it's not that hard. It's harder to do things the other way. I think to just change how you act completely. I don't know. Maybe we're all
it's a lot of
good
effort
at masking.
Maybe, but I think those are the big points that we want to cover this week on the Nile and Gerry Tea Podcast. But before we go, we have a couple of questions from some very nice little friends. First, from good friend Merfolk Sovereign.
Oh.
We have a very interesting question. What is something generally accepted in tournament etiquette, but shouldn't be? Gerry?
I have an answer here, but it might be a little too inside baseball.
Okay, hit us with
it. Assuming that folks are relatively new players or whatever, you might not know that this is a thing that exists and happens. But sometimes there are matches where there are different rewards for each player, where it's like, in theory, we're playing for top 32 to Grand Prix, which is, I don't know, $250 and 2 pro points or something. But you have 0 pro points and I have 33. So if I get 2 more pro points, I am now a gold level pro, which is roughly worth $6,000 or whatever. You going from 0 to 2 pro points is worth the same as you having 0 pro points, right? So now we're playing a match where I'm playing for $6,000 and you're playing for $250. And that's not a good scenario to exist. That's a whole other can of worms. But in this scenario, if I know that my opponent, quote unquote, gets it or is in the know, I could be like, hey, I really need these 2 pro points. Would you like to concede to me? And they'll be like, yeah, I'll concede. And then afterwards, I give them like $1,000 or something. And that is just generally acceptable at the highest levels. And now, granted, the system is a little bit different, but those sorts of situations do still occur. And basically, as long as you're not just like, yo, scoop to me and I'll pay you, which is literal bribery and collusion and illegal in the rules. Like if you do it in the secret handshake kind of way that is like technically legal, then people are kind of fine with it because they can't really do anything about it. And certainly all the people who benefit from it want that system to stay in place. So it's like they're not going to say anything.
Yeah, my answer to this is pretty similar, where I feel like it's kind of weird that it's just sort of accepted that we will like block for people, you know? Like you have no real like desire to win this event. You are, maybe you're just playing it for fun, hang out with your friends. Maybe you're dead in the event, but if you beat this next person, you can like help your friends breakers, or like whatever. Like there's all these weird situations where basically someone can be like, I'm gonna make your tournament experience worse to get my friend in, or like I'm gonna beat you and then concede to my friend, and like all these things that I think kind of chip away at tournament integrity, but we just accept as like, yeah, that's how she goes. And plays into something we've talked about before of like the EV of having friends in Magic, which is high. The EV is very fucking high, spoiler alert. I don't know, I think it's weird how much like kind of just like behind the scenes like collusion there is between friends. And like I'm saying this as someone who's done this. I've blocked for people. That limited RCQ I was talking about with Corey Burkhardt earlier, I had just won a 5K and qualified for the regionals like a week before. I was just there because I like playing limited. Me and another one of my friends were both like, hey, if we get to the top 8, we're just going to like scoop Corey in, And that did happen. Like, I just think it's weird. Like, I think it's weird that we let it happen and we all act like it's cool.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of pushback against this, but I also think that it's sort of overblown to some degree, where I don't know, the initial RCQ system where like if you maxed out your qualifications, you could not play anymore because they were worried about this happening too much, and people kept talking about like rings of people going around and like scooping slots to people or whatever. It's just like that's not happening. You're just making things up. But
yeah,
in I don't know, in the instance where it's like I'm 2-2 and you're 2-1-1 and like I'm effectively like dream crushing you or like blocking for my friend or whatever, I think that situation is fine, because in a perfect world people would be incentivized to just play their matches.
Yeah.
And ideally players are rewarded for doing that in some way,
Yeah, I think that one's fine. I think it's more so the like you and I play, you kind of dream crush me, and the next round you just like scoop yourself out of the tournament to get your friend in. And it's like, well,
yeah, it's just I happen to like them. I like them more than you.
Yeah.
Or like they need the invite more than you, or yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that stuff is pretty bad. I think that again, players should be incentivized to like play out their matches, and like they should be incentivized also to like compete in these events too, because I don't think it's a good solution where it's like if all I'm doing is blocking because I have all my invites, I should not be playing in the event. I don't think that that's a good solution. But
yeah,
I think that you should want me to like still win the tournament, and then if invites pass down or whatever, like that's fine too.
Yeah. So Merfolk Sovereign, I hope that answers your question. Our last one is from Briar.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. That is a whole podcast episode.
This is my Briar the Goat sign.
Yeah, Briar the Goat. Briar, thank you for your question as always. This is what she says this week. Hello again. My question this week is about deck orientation. I notice all the more established players I face always place their decks sideways or at a diagonal. I normally play with my deck position so the cards are oriented upwards. But one time after a judge call, the judge reshuffled my deck and placed it back sideways, and it's been percolating in my brain ever since. Is there some advantage to these orientations I'm not picking up on? Does it make drawing cards / handling easier or more reliable? Thanks for always answering my questions. Thanks for always fucking asking them, first of all.
Hell yeah, Briar the Goat. Okay.
Briar the Goat.
I'm gonna try and do this on video, Briar. I don't know if you watch the video or not. But this is card facing upward, right? What I see happening a decent amount of the time is when people keep their deck like this, they'll still draw it kind of like sideways or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And to me, in this motion, the card is like sideways and just facing outward, where your opponent, if they're sitting like a little bit over to that side, they could just see what you're drawing every time. Whereas if your deck is like this and you draw up like this, the card is never facing them. So that is basically why, because I think that this makes like a clean motion into your hand where the card never gets revealed. Whereas when it is facing upward like this and you draw like this, there is that window.
Right, there's a little window of reveal. That's really interesting. I've actually never considered that as part of the reason why. I do put my deck either like diagonal or sideways, but the reason I've always done it is because like I tend to play decks like Golgari Yawgmoth, where my graveyard gets big and matters. Like all the cards in it matter. So I would always just rather give playmat real estate to graveyard over library.
Yeah,
So to
that makes
me,
sense too.
turning it sideways is just like, I don't need like that extra tiny little bit of space to the left of the deck, but I need as much vertical graveyard space as I can get so I can like fan out my graveyard for as long as possible.
Yep.
That's really interesting. Never thought about the draw thing.
I need to do the shuffle video. I'm telling you. I watch coverage a lot of the time, and when I do, I can't help but notice players' mechanics. And even on like Pro Tour feature matches, I see people drawing their cards that way where I'm like, oh, I wonder if their opponent saw what they drew.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But yeah, well, do whatever's comfortable, honestly.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. Just do whatever the fuck you want. These are the reasons why we do it the way we do it. But if you like the way you do it, that's chill too. I mean, everyone's got their own little things. I know Reed Duke is like forever poisoned into drawing cards like they're miracle cards. And you can just like watch him like, wait a second, look at, like you can watch him draw as if it could be a miracle when it's like, that hasn't been a thing in a long time, Reed. But everyone's got their own way of getting it done. Yeah. But Briar, thank you for your question. As always. Gerry, thank you for your answers and insight and yaps with me, as always. This has been another episode of the Nile and Gerry Tea Podcast. Come back next week and we'll talk about more Magic stuff, maybe some drama. Who knows? Bye-bye!